So basically, I've got a little bit of a funny upbringing, really, because I mean, my mother and father had nothing to do with fashion. My father was a postmaster. My mother worked in the post office with him, and I was brought up in sunny Scunny in Lincolnshire, and I was a big soccer fan of Scunthorpe United. I was very lucky to move up to Newcastle from Scunthorpe in 1962. I met a friend around 1965 who said to me, "Fucking hell, Nige, I went to this fashion college and there was like 200 girls there and just one guy." I said, that's what I want to do. Then it sounds great. Then when I got to fashion college, you had the flower power, you had the Vietnam War, you had the British pop music, the American pop music. I had so much going on. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, if you've got that all mixed together, you're going to be a fucking good designer, aren't you? So I had all that inspiration. And in fact, I've even got a drawing here. This is my drawing from 1970. And every picture that's on there, all those drawings, I made those clothes to start with in 1970. Being 17 in 1967 and 21 in 1971, those 4 years were so inspirational. And of course, the Vietnam War to 64 with the Dave Clark 5 and the fucking Rolling Stones. I call everything the same. The Vietnam War and the 1940s, I roll it all into one. So Vietnam has its special pockets, big bellow pockets. I love bellow pockets. I mean, when I started doing oilskin jackets in 1979, I was fucking using the Vietnam bellow pockets onto the oilcloth jackets. So I have a knack being able to take the American, US, Marine Corps, which I love, which is all fucking green with all the fucking badges, which I love. And then I mix it always with Vietnam, because Vietnam is probably a big inspiration. So if you take Vietnam and you take Everest and you take Antarctica, these are the three things that I love, and the fucking pop music in the background. Doing a Cabourn collection is a bit of a knowledge of history. Without me having a knowledge of history, but I couldn't have a knowledge of history if I wasn't interested in it. This is a lifetime thing. My granddad was in the trenches in World War I, and he told me all about the trenches as a little boy in the 1950s. And then, of course, my dad was in Burma in World War II, and he told me everything. So I was absolutely incarcerated with knowledge of World War I and World War II. And so having a granddad and a father who were both wars, I learned a lot from my granddad. I mean, my granddad told me about, Lev Yashin, Ferenc Puskas, Di Stefano, and of course, I loved all black and all white from loving football. So, all of these things all the time. I'm like a big giant sieve of history, and I just turned it into the clothes. I'm just thinking, what did I actually have in my mind when I started? Who the hell was going to buy my product or wear it? Well, obviously I come to the conclusion of I was pretty dyslexic and my words were always a bit jumbled when I was even at fashion college. That's why I went to fashion college, because I didn't feel like too bright. And when I went to fashion college, I realised, well, I'm not too bright, so I'll start my own business. And then I thought, who the fuck's going to buy your stuff, Nige? Well, I started off with budgie jackets, I started off with loom pants, and every fucker wanted them. Okay, and I met Paul Smith, very fortunately, in 1973, who was working for Browns, and he said to me, Nige, fucking hell, I love what you're doing. I want to put my stuff in the Nottingham store, and also I'm in with all the stores in London. I want to try and sell it to London for you. And he got me into Village Gate, he got me into Jones. I had a great business by 1973. Being successful in Japan was obviously really difficult. And as I've mentioned before, you've got Paul, myself, Margaret Howell, Vivienne Westwood, who managed to make it good. But we all made it good through showing at trade shows. So I was fortunate enough to start showing in 1973 at SEM. and I showed at SEM, and I went right from 1973, or good 20 years, showing in Paris twice a year. Of course, the Japanese started to come in big drones around 1978, 79. This big department store in Japan came into me about 1978 and placed a massive order. Anyway, the next thing I know is in 1979, this is after I'd delivered it and everything, this guy came called Sam Segure, who actually owned the Margaret Howell business. And I mean, I used to like Margaret Howell as well. I used to wear a bit of it in the early 70s, and also her sister as well, Jean Howell. She did beautiful knitwear. So anyway, he came onto my stand, loved what I was doing, and he said, I represent Margaret in Japan, and I love your brand, and I'd like to launch Nigel Cabourn Big Style. And in fact, about 1981-82, we signed a 3-year deal, and he also opened a Cabourn shop. Combining contemporary with vintage is actually quite difficult, and for quite a few years, people really expected just vintage inspired clothing, and the Japanese are such purists. But when I wanted to tackle the world market with the Far East out, then you have to be a bit cleverer. And obviously what my technique always was fabric, because I'm fabric driven. I love fabric. So the thing is, the trick is to keep the vintage, but bring in great fabrics, contemporary colours, finishes, put it both together, and that's how I get it to look contemporary. The Japanese really have had a lot to do with keeping me on track, because they've kept on track. So this military idea that I had, which I mixed with the mountains and with Antarctica, with sport in the background, so you mix it up all in a melting pot, is very, very difficult for me to change. And I've kept going with it. The Japanese want it. They've got 15, 16 stores in Japan, and they still want the same thing. I love it. It's part of my whole makeup and history. So I've just kept going with it, even to the detriment of the business has gone like that. It's been like a bloody snake, it's been great for 3 years, very bad for another 3 years. It's been very up and down, but I've stuck to it. I've never really sold myself out to commercialism. I've stuck to what I know, and I love it, that's obvious. Collaborations, well, they've become quite an important part of the Nigel Cabourn business. It never really meant to be, but the reality of it is, I think because I've been doing this for all these decades, a lot of companies want to collaborate with me, and I think I've done now about 32 collaborations. And to be very honest with you, I've virtually done every collaboration with every company other than 1 or 2. I've managed to do them, and I've done some favourite ones. And it's hard to say what are the favourite ones, but obviously even doing Fred Perry was great, because I was able to talk about ping pong, which I love ping pong, and Fred Perry was world champion ping pong in 1929. Everybody knows him for tennis, but he really was ping pong world champion first, so I was able to exercise that. Obviously, when I did a collaboration with Filson, I was able to use all the fucking hunting and fishing and all the things I'd learned about in the British, and I was able to take it to the Americans. Same with Eddie Bauer. Eddie Bauer was so famous for getting to the top of Everest with Jim Whittaker in 1962. So, I wanted to combine that with Everest, with Edmund Hillary. Again, the collaboration's doing what my interests are and what I know about. And I think people know that. When I got to start doing sneakers much later, and my first sneaker collaboration was with Converse, which they came to me. I hardly got paid for the Converse, but it was a great one to start with. And then I ended up going from Converse to Mahara Yasuhiro, and this has been just a super, super success. We sold maybe 40,000 of these in the last 5 years, and I've done about 4 or 5 different versions of this. So yes, there are a few collaborations that I turned down. Some of them I've lived to regret. I had a very, very close relationship with End, who've got fantastic business today, and they've stocked every collaboration that I've done. I mean, the guy who owns it, Christian, said to me one day, some years ago, Nigel, I just want to do every Cabourn collaboration. It's important for our group. And he asked me, he said, why don't you do collaboration with Timex and New Balance? I said, oh, I'm not interested in doing New Balance or Timex, too commercial. Anyway, in the end, he pushed and pushed and pushed. So I did the Timex, and I had 5 years of it, doing 5 different watches. God knows why I didn't do the New Balance, because I could have done it in conjunction, but I didn't really take advantage of that. And I think my head was more into Mahara Yasuhiro. Obviously the Mahara Yasuhiro collab to all the other sneaker collabs that I've done is definitely different. The thing is with Mahara is he was prepared to spend money on doing something different for me. So I was allowed to sort of think outside the box, more so that if I was with Converse, it would have to be a Chuck Taylor and I'd just be able to put it into Ventile. But with Mahara Yasuhiro, I was able to chop it up, do lots of colours, change the sole slightly differently. So he was a breath of fresh air, because what I saw he did in clothing, he allowed me also to do it, you know, in the sneaker and the clothing. So we did our first sneaker together, and then we did another one and another one and another one. And I think we did about 6 seasons or 7 seasons, changing it, different colours, different textures. Then I said to him, look, we've done 3 or 4 years, we've had it off, we sold thousands, but I would really now, I think we've probably gone as far as we can. You know, you run out of ideas when you're doing a collab with one company. You've got to really think it through. And I thought people were getting a bit tired of it. And I said, why don't we do one on the first one that you ever did? And so we did one based on the original bowling shoe, Converse type, stuck together, cut in half and stuck together. And that's the most recent one that we've done, and the last collaboration we've done so far. You know, even in the 1950s, when I was about 8 or 9, you know, and I looked at the goalkeeper Lev Yashin, who was the best goalkeeper in the world, and I wanted to be a goalkeeper as well, by the way. But I was inspired by his whole black with a number 1 on the back. So I was already thinking fashion in the 1950s. When it came into the 60s, I spent the whole 60s being a designer. So in effect, I feel like I've been doing it 6 decades, not 5, and I hope to do at least between 70 and 80, another decade. So, you know, I mean, I think I'm going to get 6 to 7 decades out of this if I'm lucky.